In this video, we're reviewing one of the most missed mechanics at the high school level. It's one you won't find in the Umpire Manual and that isn't covered in one-day camps, but for pro school graduates, it's as basic as where to stand during the plate meeting. The mechanic I'm talking about is how we umpire mound visits. So in this video, we'll first review the rules and mechanics for mound visits and conferences, and then we'll work through case plays to better understand these mechanics. Now, if you want to see how well you can do on the case plays before going through the review with me at the end of this video, you can find a link to it in the video description. Hi everyone, Patrick Farber from JHSA Baseball Umpire Development and Umpire Classroom, where we help umpires develop their knowledge and skills. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe to our channel and check out the rest of our videos. Also, if you want next week's case plays emailed to you, you can sign up in the video description. Let's get started. There are three outcomes that can come from any time a coach goes to the mound during an inning: a charged conference, a pitching change, or an injury check. All three of these options are going to result in an umpire needing to take some action, so let's discuss rulebook responsibilities during a mound visit. Rule 10-2-3. The umpire chief's duties include D. Announce each substitution. J. Keep a written record of defensive and offensive team charged conferences for each team and notify the respective coach each time a conference is charged to his team. He shall also be responsible for keeping a lineup card and recording all substitutes, courtesy runner participation, and warnings. So this tells us that the plate umpire is the only one who holds responsibility for tracking defensive conferences and substitutions. So if we have a mound visit by a coach in which no substitutions occur, then the plate umpire is responsible for tracking the time it occurred and the number that team has used so far in the game. Now, what I mean by tracking the time it occurred, I'm not talking about the time of day, but instead the situational details, such as inning, score, pitcher's number, batter's number, runners on base. There's no set standard of what must be written, but we do want to keep enough quality information to tell the coach exactly when it occurred when he tries to argue with you later in the game about how many conferences he has remaining. Now, to prevent that arguing, the rule also requires us to tell the coach when he has used a conference. But let's use some situation handling skills to do this in the right way. If in the top of the first inning, the home team has given up 4 runs while getting no outs, and the coach goes to the mound to talk to the pitcher and then starts to leave, we don't need you to tell him, "Hey coach, that's your first." Yeah, he already knows that. He ain't real happy about it either and doesn't need your reminder. Where you'll likely need to give a reminder is later in the game when a coach has 1 or 0 remaining conferences. But again, use good judgment. If he's pissed at you and or your partner, don't worry about getting in his face to tell him how many times he has been to the mound. He most likely already knows. Now, if he does make a pitching change, then we obviously will not charge a defensive conference, but of course, we will need to track the substitution on our lineup card and also signal the change to the press box and the opposing coach. On this, note though that if the substitution is obvious, we don't need to conference with either coach. If the pitcher that was on the mound hands the ball to the coach and walks through the dugout, while the next pitcher jogs out to the mound from the bullpen and starts warming up, this is an obvious straight substitution. You don't need to have a discussion about it. You may wave it into the press box or to the opposing coach, but that really isn't necessary when it's this obvious. That said, if you do have a big change that will require communication with the opposing coach, have that coach come to you to give them the change. Don't go to their dugout. And remember, the plate umpire is also responsible for the number of warm-up pitches the new pitcher is going to receive, and that plate umpire is supposed to count these pitches. Now, this is where the base umpire can help. Since you're standing in the shallow outfield without the responsibilities of the plate umpire, count the number of warm-up pitches as well, and be prepared to discreetly signal that number to the plate umpire. Sometimes the plate umpire may miss some or lose count while handling the rest of their responsibilities during the change, and you can be a real crew saver by having just counted down from 8. Finally, the last potential outcome is that we have no substitution and no charged conference because the visit to the mound was to check on a potentially injured player. In this situation, the plate umpire needs to go up to the mound with the coach and trainer and listen to the conversation. You don't need to be involved, and you certainly don't need to make any assessment towards if the pitcher is actually injured. Just listen in from within earshot to ensure they are actually checking on a potential injury and not just disguising a conference. Then, when the injury check ends, as everyone goes back to their positions, give a safe mechanic to the opposing bench to indicate that a conference was not charged. Next, let's cover the length of a conference. Rule 3-4-4. The coach shall be given a reasonable amount of time for the charged conference as determined by the umpire-in-chief. That's it. That's the only rule you'll find on it. and it isn't expanded upon in the casebook or manual. It's simply what you determine to be a reasonable amount of time. So here's how I think of it coming from a background in professional baseball, and maybe this can help you determine how you want to interpret this rule. In professional baseball, the rule is 30 seconds. So what I would do is once the coach crosses the foul line going to the mound, I would count up to 20. Then once I got to 20, I would walk to the mound and try to get a position opposite the coach and at about his head side so he can see I've come to break it up. By this point, it's about 30 seconds, but I wouldn't say anything immediately and just use my presence to show him it's time to finish. Then if he did continue to keep going, I'd say something like, okay, here we go, and encourage him to move on. This is usually all you need to do. Note, you don't need to put a strict end to the conference or cut off a conversation. Also, the time for each conference doesn't by rule need to be the exact same. I gave you the typical 30-second example, but that can vary. Example 1, if the coach is down 10 runs and looks like he has no clue what he's doing to stop the bleeding, I may give him a little extra time. Example 2, if he's been complaining about balls and strikes and keeps looking at you on his way to the mound, I'm probably going up to the mound there since it seems he wants to have a conversation with me. On a side note, there's a decent chance that conversation is going to lead to an ejection, but we'll cover that in a different video. Now, let's cover the mechanics for the umpires during this visit. The correct position for the plate umpire is on the foul line opposite the defensive team's dugout and a quarter to halfway to the base on that line. So if the defensive team is in the first base side dugout, then the umpire should go up the third base line. Now, this may seem irrelevant or even contradictory given we may need to get changes from the coach, but there's several reasons why this is the correct approach and why it's the mechanic given in professional baseball. The first is that this positions us out of the way of the coach. It's very rare that a coach is going to the mound because his pitcher is doing well and everything is going great. Usually it's because they're digging themselves in a hole and he's probably not too happy about it. Now, we all know the best strategy for handling an upset boss or wife. It's get out of the way. And the same strategy works for coaches. Go to the opposite line and let him do what he needs to do without you introducing yourself to his sideline. This opposite position is also used because it allows you to watch him from the dugout to the mound and back without him ever getting behind you. It also lets you see into his dugout without having to turn around. This way, if he or his dugout makes any comments to you about the zone or other calls, you don't look like the aggressor turning back to him or the dugout. You see them the entire time and can handle whatever remarks may come. Another benefit of this position opposite the coach is that when it is time to break up the conference, it lines you up perfectly to where you want to go, which is opposite the coach. More often than not, when a mound visit occurs, the pitcher stays in roughly the same place, which is around the rubber. Then the catcher runs straight in and the coach straight from the dugout. This position opposite the defensive team's dugout positions you so that when you go up to the mound, you'll be directly in the sightline of the coach without having to walk in a big circle around the conference. And from this position opposite the coach, he'll get the message the conference needs to end just by seeing you're in his sights. This sometimes even works just because he sees you starting to walk to the mound. Also, if you get up there and they do want to complain about balls and strikes, it's always going to be the coach, not the players. So now you're looking right at the coach to have this confrontation. The reason amateur umpires think they need to go on the defensive team's side is they think it will make it easier to get the substitutions. Now, if a team is making a very complicated substitution with many players, then yes, this might be beneficial. But most of the time, the substitution is a straight change. One guy off and another on. For these, you don't need to trade away all the benefits of the position on the opposite foul line. In fact, you probably won't even need to communicate at all with the coach. Use your eyes to get the number of the player leaving and the number of the player coming in and fill it in on your lineup card. The coach is keeping his copy of the lineup card anyways, and he'll see if there was an error like an incorrect number or missing player and approach you if necessary. And he'll probably even do this before you even notice the error anyways. So protect the benefits of the opposite foul line approach and don't overcomplicate the process of tracking substitutions. Now, for our base umpires, your correct position is in the shallow outfield. Again, the mindset here is that we want to keep an open view of the players, coaches, and dugouts, and similarly, we don't want to get in the way of an angry coach. Also, the umpire who will handle ending a conference is the plate umpire. So this position keeps us far enough away that it doesn't look awkward having us standing nearby doing nothing while our plate umpire goes to the mound. And on a final note, this is not an opportunity to go talk to your plate umpire. They have more responsibilities they need to handle during this, so stay out of their way. So that's the rules and mechanics for mound visits. Now, let's watch MLB umpire Quinn Wilcott use this in a game and lead up to an ejection. Here we're going to break down a 2015 ejection of an MLB manager during a pitching change. The great thing about this ejection is we're going to see MLB umpire Quinn Wilcott use proper mechanics during a pitching change in order to best handle this situation and really come off as in control, while it makes the manager look like the one that's being the aggressor and ultimately not in control of the situation.
Saladino singles in 2 and nightmarish 8th inning, to put it mildly.
So as you see here, he's complaining down to Quinn. Quinn's taking his position up the third base line. And again, by being up the third base line, opposite the dugout of the defensive team, one, the manager's not coming out behind him. And for the manager to say something, he can't just say something under his breath, glancing by him. He has to look that way and be loud with it. And this shows everybody he's being the aggressor. He's the one that's not doing what he's supposed to do, while Quinn is ultimately standing very calmly on the third base line. And in his position on the third base line, he's able to watch Lloyd from the dugout all the way to the mound and back to the dugout when the time comes.
Mound. Not happy.
Keeps going. Calls the bullpen, takes the ball from the pitcher.
I don't think the umpire.
Here you go, he keeps arguing. As you saw, as Lloyd was going up to the mound, he signaled the bullpen to have the next pitcher come in and took the ball from his starting pitcher. Right here, this is an obvious substitution and a straight change. There's no need for an umpire to have a conversation with a manager on a change like this. And most often when you have a pitching change in an inning, it's a straight change just like this. There's no conversation needed.
Action of throwing him out of here, that's the problem.
Keeps arguing.
There you go.
Gets
He got
ejected.
his money's worth. Quinn Wilcott.
This goes on for a minute. He's had to get through it. He's still waiting.
That's right. Really frustrated. What's going on?
Ugly. Boy, oh boy.
Now real quickly, again, where's Lloyd going to have to go? He's been ejected. He's going to have to go back to his clubhouse, which he gets to through his dugout on the first base side. By Quinn already being up the third base line, he's out of his way. There's no interaction that has to happen between them for Lloyd to get back to his dugout. Now, Gary has taken a position, Gary Cedarstrom, he's the crew chief, has taken a position between Quinn and Lloyd. This way, if Lloyd does deviate from his path back to the dugout, Gary's able to intercept him and get him going the right direction. And again, this position on the third base line will make it very clear to everyone at the game that if there is going to be a conversation had, Lloyd's the one being the aggressor, deviating from his path to try and make it happen. And here you see, Lloyd's deviating from his path, trying to get over to Quinn, trying to keep complaining about balls and strikes. Gary's going to try to get in between this conversation, and he does a great job of it. This is why he's a two-time World Series crew chief. And here's pulling off the classic umpire move to end a conversation. When you are the one breaking up the conversation after an ejection, for example, like this, start walking the manager back to his dugout. Once you've made eye contact and started the conversation with him, he's going to want to keep having that conversation with you. So if you slowly start moving the direction of his dugout, he's going to follow you. And that's a great way to get him off the field into the dugout so you can keep playing. Keeps going, almost stops. But Gary says, no, you're done, go back. And he does.
In his point across for the next couple of days.
Yeah.
So again, this is a great example of how we use the proper mechanics during a pitching change, the benefits of doing it, how it pays off in situations such as this, and again, how ultimately during most pitching changes, there's no need for us to communicate with the manager other than maybe a simple wave or point. We know who the change is, everyone can tell, but again, don't give up the position opposite the defensive dugout. that allows you to handle situations as perfectly as Quinn does here. Now let's go ahead and work through this week's case plays. Case play number 1. The visiting team is in the first base dugout. In the bottom of the 3rd inning, with a runner on second base, the visiting team head coach uses a mound visit. Where should the plate umpire stand? A, at the point of the plate, B, on the 3rd base line, C, on the 1st base line. The correct answer here is B. The plate umpire should always go to the foul line opposite the dugout of the defensive team during a defensive conference. Case play number 2. The visiting team is in the first base dugout. In the bottom of the 3rd inning, with a runner on second base, the visiting team head coach uses a mound visit. Which of the following places are acceptable for the field umpire to stand during the visit? In the B position, in the C position, in the shallow outfield, or next to the plate umpire? The one and only correct answer here is for our base umpires to stand in the shallow outfield during any defensive conference. We want to be far enough away to avoid causing any confrontation with the coach that could be avoided by simply being further away. Case play number 3. Which umpire is responsible for counting mound visits / defensive conferences? The correct answer here is that only the plate umpire holds that responsibility, and it's specifically laid out in the rule book. Case play number 4. Which umpire is responsible for ending the conference if the coach is not doing so in a timely manner? And again, by rule, the only umpire who holds this responsibility is the plate umpire. Case play number 5. By rule, how long is a defensive conference? A, 30 seconds, B, 45 seconds, C, 60 seconds, or D, undefined. The correct answer here is D. The NFHS rulebook does not lay out any specific amount of time for a defensive conference. The only guidance given in the rulebook is that the umpire chief, the plate umpire, is to give the amount of time as they deem necessary. Case play number 6. Must all defensive conferences in a game be given the same amount of time? The answer here is no. There's no rulebook requirement that each defensive conference be given roughly the same amount of time. Now, it is encouraged that you have a standard amount of time that you try to give, but that may have to deviate depending on the situation. So there you have it, our review of Umpire Mechanics for mound visits. If you found this video helpful, be sure to check out the rest of our videos, and if there are videos that you would like to see in the future, be sure to leave your ideas in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and as always, I look forward to seeing you on the field.